So now we'll look at genetic algorithms. These are evolutionary computing methods, algorithms primarily motivated by Darwin's theory of evolution. So what Darwin's theory of evolution says is, it talks about natural selection, which essentially implements what's called the survival of the fittest. So in a population of individuals or living beings, there will be variations among the characteristics that this population exhibits, and those variations which fits into the current context, in the current environmental context, will survive, and those beings or living beings or members of the population which survives will give rise to the next generation, and the generation continues and will carry over, primarily will have those features which are favorable in that context. So for example, in the case of animals with variations in their in the length of their neck, say for example giraffe, the ones when all the vegetation available at a particular level is eaten off, only those animals with longer necks, so that they can reach that vegetation, will survive and they'll reproduce. And over time you can see that the ones with the longer neck will be the one that exists in that population of that particular species. So is the case with black colored moths that survived in Industrial Revolution period in the Industrial Revolution era. So this is another example. Essentially, genetic algorithms are computing methods which are primarily motivated by the Darwin's theory of evolution, which works around variation in the characteristics of individuals in a population, and the variations, those variations which are favorable at that context will get selected, the natural selection or survival of the fittest. And can we leverage this iterative process which happens in an evolutionary process? Can we build an equivalent computing mechanism? And that question led to this particular class of evolutionary algorithms called genetic algorithms. And this was introduced in 1916 by Reichenbach. It became popular with a book, Adaptation, Natural and Artificial Systems, 1975, John Holland's book. And so they also, there was again a modified version of genetic algorithms, which primarily to perform adaptation over programs, and that's called genetic programs. And John Kosa proposed genetic programming later in 1992. So that's a little about history. And what are they? They are essentially search and optimization techniques. Darwin's principle of natural selection is a primary motive behind it. And this got a lot of attention. And in Business Week 94, Bill Gates said the gene is by far the most sophisticated program around. So you understand the context. So how does the natural selection works? I've already given you examples. The giraffes with slightly longer necks could feed on leaves or higher branches. When all lower ones have been eaten off, the ones with the longer necks will have better chance of survival. That's a favorable characteristic, and those individuals will give rise to the next generation, and that will continue, right? So certain variations, which primarily happens because of the natural phenomena like mutations, are favored by nature. In that context, survival of the fittest doesn't mean that survival of the best. It's a fittest in that particular context. All right. So this is the nature's process on evolution. Initial population of animals struggle for existence. Survival of the fittest will happen. Surviving individuals reproduce, propagate favorable characteristics. Say, for example, in our giraffe's case, the ones with the longer necks will survive, and they'll reproduce, and they give rise to the next generation. And millions of years, you get an evolved species. The species will have longer necks, right? Because only then they can survive, and the other ones will die off in the process. All right. So genetic algorithms, I've already told you, these are optimization methods. They can implement optimization strategies by simulating the evolution of species through natural selection. The evolutionary cycle, if you look at it, you have a population of animals. In our case, let us look at product mix problem. In a product mix problem, we can make breads and biscuits by a machine, and there are restrictions on the available supply of material, machine time, etc. So your agenda is to optimize your profit. So for every packet of biscuit or a bread made, you get some profit. So if N1 and N2 are the variables which essentially represents the quantities of bread and biscuit to be made, quantities of packets of bread and biscuits to be made, N1 into profit of bread per packet plus N2 into profit of biscuit per packet will give you the objective function, the function that the profit function that is to be maximized with respect to the constraints on available material as well as the machine time. So you start with here in this problem, your problem is essentially finding the values of N1 and N2. You have got two variables, N1 and N2. You are searching for the values of N1 and N2 in the entire constrained space constrained by the available restrictions in the problem context. And you are by optimization, by maximization, what you are essentially looking for is you are searching the available space of N1 and N2 to find that best value of N1 and N2 which will maximize the profit and at the same time obeying all the constraints. So essentially optimization methods are search methods, and evolutionary the genetic algorithm is a particular form of evolution algorithm. Genetic algorithm is essentially a optimization method or a search strategy. So in the population of animals, like say the population, there'll be selection based on certain characteristics, natural selection, the longer necks will survive, procreation, the reproduction operation, and then evaluation, basically the evaluation meaning are they healthy, the animals are healthy, and the ones with what you call healthy will get to the population, and the process continues. Likewise, can we represent our problem, our optimization problem, in the context of or on similar lines as that of evolutionary cycle? So in our case, the population, instead of the population of animals, when we want to build a computational equivalent, instead of population of animals, what we'll have will be a population of solutions. All right, solutions meaning the values in our product mix case, the values of an N1 and N2. Can we start with a population of 5 solutions, randomly guessed solutions? We say, okay, we'll make 20 packets of bread or 200 packets of bread and 250 packets of biscuit. Likewise, I can have another random guess 350 and 200. Another random guess 150 and 350, and likewise I can make 5 guesses of N1 and N2. That becomes my population of potential solutions. That's my initial guess. For each of these N1 and N2 pair, I can compute the corresponding profit function, right? So I can compute the objective function, and N1 and N2, when I guess and I start with the initial population, when I guess values for N1 and N2, I need to make sure that I am in the available space. See, N1 can have, with the available material, with the available machining time, I cannot make infinite quantities of N1, bread or biscuit. N1 cannot be infinite, N2 cannot be infinite. That's basically N1 can be, N1 or N2 can be more than 0, and it is upper limited, right? Upper bounded by some value, say 500, let's assume 500. So N1 and N2 will assume value between 0 and 500, and then you start with some guesses of these solutions. So your population is essentially the set of all solutions that you're considering, and you fix a population size. So let's assume that population size is 5. All right. Selection primarily, like now you need to select which one you'll select. Among the random guesses, I would like to select the ones which gives me the maximum profit. Essentially, I'll look for, with respect to the objective function or the profit equation, I'll find out the ones with the reasonable value for objective function, and from those I'll select them as parents, those solutions. I try to guess better solution from that. So that's called the reproduction or procreation operator, and then I can do again objective, evaluate the children, the primarily like the ones that are created, and then the population can, the cycle can continue. So this is how the typical, this is the equivalent representational mechanism, or rather it's the equivalent of a computing paradigm which can mimic the process of evolutionary cycle, the Darwin's theory of evolution. And this particular strategy or mechanism is called the genetic algorithm. So we begin with initial set of solutions. We evaluate solutions. If you have an optimal solution, then you stop, or else you could do whatever. You do a selection based on your objective function. You can do, then you have to do a procreation or reproduction operator, and the operator would be like, can be a crossover operator. You can add what do you call minor variations to it, and that's called a mutation operator. We are coming there, and then you keep continuing the process unless you have an optimal solution, right? So a simple genetic algorithm which is essentially mimicking Darwin's theory of evolution or evolutionary cycle. I start with an initial set of populations. The population, I've already told you, population of solutions. You can calculate fitness functions while the fitness value is not optimal value, right? Or else you can stop at n number of iterations. You do a selection. You can do a natural, very similar to natural selection. You can do survival of the fittest. Then you do a procreation, reproduction operation. It's simply a crossover, and you can introduce variations on the population by mutation, and then calculate fitness, and you go in that iteration. That's how it happens. This is how this is a simple structure of a genetic algorithm. It's nothing but mimicking the evolutionary computing process, and this can implement essentially in the search space of the variables under consideration. You can do search. You can do optimization with this particular computing paradigm called the genetic algorithm, right? So the mapping would be nature. You have population, population of giraffes. In the computing paradigm, you have set of solutions. You have guesses for n1 and n2. That's what it is in our product mix case. Individuals are, right? Individual is an animal there. Individual is one solution. One guess for n1 and n2 will be one value, one pair for n1 and n2. One value pair for n1 and n2 would be a solution. Fitness will be fitness of an animal there. The quality of a solution. So in our case, we can say like the profit computed with that pair of n1 and n2 values. Chromosome is essentially the genetic material. Encoding, right? Encoding of what do you call the characteristics in the case of an animal. Encoding of a solution will be the chromosome in our computing space. How do you encode the values of, see, essentially you are looking for what do you call the best value for n1 and n2 with respect to the objective function and the constraints. All right, how do you encode the solution, right? That's what it is in the computing paradigm. Gene is basically like, how do you encode? If there are multiple things to be encoded, each of these, you have n1, n2, etc. So each of these can be considered as a part of a gene. All right, a reproduction operator is essentially in the animal world. Equivalently, you have crossover operator. You take two chromosomes, you mix them together, and then you get a new, you get one or more offspring or children. Right, that's called the reproduction operator, equivalent reproduction operator in genetic algorithms. All right, let's move on. So GA is essentially a computing paradigm which mimics the natural evolution or natural selection process or evolutionary computing process, Darwin's theory of evolution, and the computing paradigm is called the genetic algorithms. The first step to implement such a strategy which mimics evolutionary process would be in the form of evolutionary computing or genetic algorithm would be like you need to encode, right? Equivalent to the population, we have population of solutions. So the encoding is a process of representing the solution in the form of a string that conveys the necessary information, just as in a chromosome represents characteristics of an individual. Can be encode solutions. There are multiple encoding strategies or mechanisms available. Phenotype space encoding and genotype encoding. Phenotype space, say when you are representing your hair color, so your hair color is a phenotype. It's actually the exhibited form, and your hair color is represented in your gene as a codified form, and that is called a genotype. So codified form of your hair color becomes a genotype, and the actual value exhibited is called a phenotype. So in genetic algorithm context, people have used, original implementation was only genotype space, and people started encoding in the phenotype space also, the exhibited space, the primarily like the one that is observed also, the space of observed values also, it's called encoding in the observed space of phenotype space. Phenotype is essentially like the one that is being observed, and its encoded form is called the genotype. All right. Some of the preliminary methods in encoding, the first being binary encoding. Most common method of encoding, chromosomes are strings of ones and zeros, and each position in the chromosome represents a particular characteristics of problem. So for example, chromosome A can be like this chromosome. So essentially a value get encoded in the form of a binary string. All right, that's what it is. You can put, so you have got a value 13 to be represented, you get what you call the binary equivalent of 13, and N1 and N2, I can have a chromosome which say for example N1 and N2, I see like, okay, the values can be encoded in 4 digits, 4 bits. 4 bits means 2 raised to 4, right? What is 2 raised to 4? So it's 16, right? The values are between 16, you get 4. So basically like N1 and N2, each of these is 4 bits long, I'll get an 8 bit strong chromosome. Like this, I can encode a binary, direct binary encoding of values is possible. All right, for the variables. So I can concatenate. Say I've got 2 variables in our current context, N1 and N2. I can compute. I can find the what you call the precision over which these variables needs to be represented in the binary representation format. I can concatenate those binary strings to form the chromosome. That's the simplest. Permutation encoding is useful in ordering patterns. Say for example, traveling salesman problem that we are going to see in today's class. What is a TSP problem? There is a traveling salesman, meaning there is a salesman who is traveling. The traveling salesman need to cover, let's assume that there are 9 cities the traveling salesman need to cover. So, and the condition is the salesman should not visit any city more than once. Let me repeat, there is a salesman who needs to travel to 9 cities. The salesman should not reach any city more than once, and the total distance covered in covering the entire tour, primarily like covering the entire set of cities, should be minimal. So find that route which minimizes the travel distance, right? That's a problem, but no city is allowed. I mean, you're not allowed to visit any city more than once. That's called the traveling salesman's problem, and the problem is a hard problem. You can, I mean, if the number of cities are like maybe like 10, 15, you can easily like what do you call it? You can exhaustively list down the options, but as the problem size increases, the problem becomes computationally intractable. And most of the TSP algorithms are approximation algorithms because in a hard problem there is no polynomial time algorithm existing today to solve a TSP for an n city problem. Right, it's a hard problem. So what happens here is the relevance of this problem, and we are going to see one such example of how GA can solve a TSP problem. That's there as a part of our agenda. The relevance of this TSP problem is this finds applications across domains, including e-commerce. For example, I mean, see, we have to what do you call, make sure that a particular item reaches what do you call, a truck reaches every other what do you call, delivery point with the minimal distance covered. The logistics problem. So is the case with an e-commerce logistic problem. So is the case with data routing, information dissemination problems. So TSP finds applications across domain. It's a very interesting problem, a hard problem, and in this case, let's look at the traveling salesman problem. What is the solution? Solutions are, say there are 9 cities numbered from 1 to 9. The first solution, first guess can be like as simple as what you see in front of you. So the salesman can travel from start from at city 1, go to city 5, then 3, 2, etc. So there is one ordering, one permutation of the 9 what do you call, values that you get. That's basically the city labels. And you get another permutation. It start with 8, 5, etc. So any ordering, any permutation becomes what you call a solution. All right. Potential solution. So basically, any candidate solution will be a permutation. So permutation encoding, what you do is problems of this kind, your chromosome, the solution will be encoded in the form of a string, which is essentially representing a permutation of the available symbols. Right. That's another type of encoding. Now comes value encoding. This is essentially a phenotype encoding. The value can be actually put in. Right. So, for example, genetic algorithms are heavily used in motor control applications. Say, for example, there's a robot which landed in, for example, Mars, right? And you don't have absolutely no clue on the terrain, right? There are n number of motors to be moved, stepper motors primarily, to be rotated, to be adjusted in such a way that it can stand properly. Primarily, like this robot can actually balance properly. So you need to figure out the rotations of each of these motors, and you start guessing some values, start doing it, and you keep adjusting them in such a way that, and if you can measure with your available sensors, if you can measure the extent of balance or quantify the parameters related to the balancing of that particular object, that robot, then you have an objective function. So you need to adjust. You find to search the values or the rotations that these motors needs to do in such a way that you perfectly balance it once you land on a terrain. Right? You can start with randomness, but you need to adjust it. And this is true for design problems. You have n modules to be combined, and you need to build a building. And then how do you optimally place them? So that's again design problems, vehicle design, building design problems, robot control moments, moment control problems, etc., etc. So essentially, you can actually put the values as such in the case of what you call value encoding. Primarily, like you put values as such in the chromosome. All right, that's another type of encoding. Once you have encoded, these are not the only forms of encoding. These are the primary forms. There are binary based encoding, there are permutation based encoding, there is value based encoding. And once you have what you call encoding, the next step is you need to define the notion of the optimization problem in hand. You need to define the notion of objective functions and optimization, the formal definition of the optimization that you're looking at. So you need a fitness function, very similar to the fitness function of, in the case of an evolutionary natural evolution process. So you need a fitness function. So fitness of a solution is basically it's a function that computes optimality of a solution. Say, for example, in the case of a traveling salesman's problem, what will be the fitness function? The fitness function can be can compute the total distance, or over a permutation you have some ordering of the cities. If you travel like that, what will be the total distance covered? Can be the fitness function. So the ones with the lower value for that distance would be more fit compared to a higher travel distance, right? So in the case of our product mix problem, the profit function would be the fitness function, right? The distance between the what do you call the distance covered in a tour would be the fitness function in a TSP problem. Now comes a parent selection. Say, for example, you have got a mechanism to mimic evolutionary competition, natural evolution. You have identified a chromosome equivalent to chromosome. I have got a chromosome here. I have an encoded form of solutions. Equivalent to the fitness, I have a fitness function. Now, what's the next step? What is the parent selection? Natural selection, equivalent to natural selection. Can we implement parent selection methods, the individuals that survive, so that they'll give rise to the next generation of individuals or children? All right, that process is called the parent selection. This is basically parallel to the natural selection process. All right, there are primarily three types of parent selection methods. Once you have a population of individuals, how do you select the ones that survives so that they'll give rise to the next generation? And the ones that we are going to see here is proportionate selection, linear rank selection, and tournament selection. Proportionate selection. Proportionate selection is very simple. You have got fitness function. You've got the fitness function, right? Once you have the fitness function, you can actually compute. So you've got, let's assume that you've got 5 solutions under consideration. The population size is 5, meaning at any point in time we'll be considering 5 solutions. And you have got you can compute the fitness for each of these 5 members of the population. And you can sum up those fitness values, and you can compute the fraction fitness of an individual member divided by the sum of fitness values. All right. So that you compute, it's basically like you compute how much of the pie you have in hand. Primarily, you get an idea of your proportion. That's called proportionate selection. So, for example, in here you can see that some and the proportionate selection is also called the Rowlett-Wheel selection. We'll tell you, I mean, we'll see how why it's called Rowlett-Wheel selection. This is a simple example. There is some string. You have got we have got strings are essentially chromosomes. We have got 4 chromosomes over here, and some fitness function is also computed. All right. This is nothing but the sum of fitness values. You add up all these things, you get this. Right. So 169 by 1170 is 14.4. So this is what that P, the proportion of the pie you have is 14.4, and 576 is 49.2, and likewise. So when you are selecting parents, you should not just select the best among the population. So you've got 5 candidates at this point in time. The simplest strategy is choose only the best. The best may not always result in what do you call the best offspring. You have to mix and match, and that's where the parent selection or selection mechanisms becomes relevant. All right. So what you do here is you have a Rowlett wheel. You have a wheel, and what you do is for each of the members in the population, you compute the proportionate fraction they get from the wheel. So, for example, solution 1 will get 14.4% of the entire area, and likewise solution 4 will get 30.9. Right? You divide the Rowlett wheel into 30 into 4, because there are only 4 individuals, and there is a pointer. You have a pointer here, and you rotate the wheel. All right, you have a pointer. You place pointer at some place, and you rotate the wheel. The wheel will stop at some, right. You have got 4 cuts of the wheel here. The Rowlett wheel is divided into 4 pieces. You have got the pie is divided into 4. Right. The wheel is rotated, and there is a pointer placed somewhere. It's a fixed pointer. So what happens is, so let's assume that the pointer is somewhere here. The wheel is rotated. When the wheel is rotated, the wheel will stop at, right, the pointer. When the wheel stops, the pointer will be pointing to some of these, right. Either it may point to 1, it may point to 4, it may point to 3 or 2, whatever. The wheel is fixed. The pointer is fixed, and the wheel is rotating. The wheel will stop at some position, so that the pointer is pointing to either 1, 2, 3, or 4. But the chance of the pointer pointing to 2 when the wheel stops will be more compared to the chance of the pointer pointing to 4 when the wheel stops, right? Compared to, so the one that has the least chance of getting the pointer would be 3, and the one with the maximal chance over here would be 2. And the chance, primarily like the cut of the pie or the area of the wheel, is allotted based on the proportion of your fitness compared to the rest of the fox out there. This is called proportionate selection, and is implemented using mechanism called Rowlett-Wheel selection. Each current string in the population has a slot, and the slot is proportional to fitness. We spin the wheel. When we rotate the wheel, when the wheel stops, the string corresponding to that of the slot is created. Primarily, the pointer is selected. So everybody gets a chance, but your chance will depend on your fitness value. That's the basic idea of proportionate selection method. In the parental selection method, the proportionate selection is based on the fitness, but even when your fitness value is low, you get a chance. But your chance will be. I mean, your chance of landing as a selected parent would be less if your fitness value is low. All right, this is called proportionate selection. But the problem here is, if some of the fitness values are highly skewed, meaning you have certain fitness values which are very high or very low, what will happen is, so the ones with very large fitness values will eat away most of the space over this roulette wheel. To avoid this context, people have researched on further and said, hey, let's not do that. Let us do a ranking. Let us call the one with the highest fitness as a ranked 1, right? The next fitness as ranked 2, ranked 3, etc., etc. Now what I can do is, we can compute that particular what you call proportion as a measure, primarily like based on the rank rather than the actual value of the fitness function. So let's assume that Ri is the rank of the individual I. Ri meaning is the rank is basically in the order. When you order the population members according to the fitness value, where does I stands is Ri. So Ri may be 1, 2, etc. whatever. Right? If I have 5, I got, everybody will get. So in this particular example, the rank 1 will go to this fellow, rank 2 will come to this fellow, rank 3 will be here, and rank 4 will be here. Once I've computed the rank, P is the population size, P minus rank. So basically like, and P minus Ri divided by P minus 1. P minus 1 would be like, what do you call it? P is a population size. So you get a fraction. You multiply that with the what do you call the length of the interval, and you add the minimum of that value of basically in our case the minimum of the value would be the max represent the fitness assigned to the best individual and min represent the fitness to the worst individual. In our case, the minimum is over here, 64. So you add 64, right? So essentially you find a fraction, essentially you find a proportion which respects the rank rather than the actual value of the fitness. That's what is computed here. So you can do a better, you can be a little more rational when it comes to allocation of space in the roulette wheel, because it depends only on the rank. And what you do here is essentially you can do roulette wheel only, but instead of what do you call the area getting divided based on the actual fitness value, the area get divided based on the rank. That's what a linear rank selection method, same method, but the area get allocated, the proportion get allocated based on your position in when you rank based on the fitness values. That's called linear rank selection. And another selection strategy is called a tournament selection method. Tournament selection is it's very similar to the tournament selection method that you typically use in outdoor games. So there are Q individuals that are randomly selected from the population, and the best of the Q individuals return as the patient, as the parent. So if when you are playing a tournament between n number of teams from every other Q members, you choose one, right? Q members, you choose one, and that becomes like kind of so that will play with another, maybe like another individual chosen from a different gang. So it's essentially like the tournament selection pressure. So I've got 25 teams competing. Out of every 5 team, right, you get one, and that one will play with what do you call another team selected from another 5. So you call it pooling, right, in the generic context of tournaments, and you see that in across what do you call sports selection mechanism. So the basically like the tournaments at the globally acclaimed ones. So this is tournament selection, and if the Q is increased, meaning if you have, say, I choose only 1 out of 2, I choose 1 out of 5. As Q, the size of the pool primarily like increases, the selection pressure is increases, and the selection pressure is less if the Q size is less, right? So that's called tournament selection. So out of every 2 individuals, I can choose 1. So how do you choose between, in our case, in the genetic algorithm case, you can select based on the fitness value, right? From you take randomly take two members of the population, you return the one with the maximal value for the fitness function. That's what it is. And if your selection Q is 5, you take 5 randomly from the population and then do it. Your population size is 20, out of which you take 5 at any point in time, randomly choose, and the one with the maximal value for the fitness will be returned as a parent, right? So these are 3 parental selection methods. Parental selection, you must have noticed that parental selection methods are designed in such a way that everybody gets a chance. Proportionate selection respects the value of the fitness. Linear rank selection respects the value of the fitness, but rather than value, it respects your position in the entire range of fitness values. And tournament selection, if you happen to be in a pool of weak candidates, you may end up getting selected, right? If the Q elements that are along with you are all weak members, meaning in terms of the fitness values, their fitness values are lesser than you, you have a better chance. If you have in a set of weak members, you may get a higher chance. So sometimes people refer tournament selection as a mechanism which can even promote the luckiest, right? The tournament selection, because you may end up in a pool where your peers have probably lower fitness values. So if you are lucky, you may get into such a pool. So that's fitness of what you call fitness becomes the primary criteria for selection. Then survival of the luckiest can also happen in tournament selection. Right. So now comes, so we have to implement, we have to mimic a parallel computing paradigm which is parallel to the evolutionary process. So we have looked at how we encode chromosomes. We have looked at notion of fitness. We have looked at natural selection. What is remaining is procreation or the reproduction operator. How do you create new individuals out of the selected parents? Primarily 2 operators, crossover, it's equivalent to sexual recombination, and that's the primary operator where you compute new chromosomes out of existing chromosomes, typically 2 at a time. And once you have created new chromosomes, if you want to change a little of that, that's called mutation. So let us look at crossover operator. It's the process with which 2 chromosomes combine their genetic material to produce a new offspring, which possess characteristics from both the individuals. That's called crossover. This is equivalent to the reproduction operator in the animal world. It's called the procreation operator. So crossover can have multiple variants. A simple form of crossover is called a single point crossover. You see 2 strings there, right? I mean, basically 2 signals, and you can do a single cut, right? And you can what do you call it? You can stitch them back after exchanging the material. So string 1 and string 2 are cut 1 point, and then you exchange the material, right? The new string produced would be like you get a new offspring with certain characteristics of the parents, string 1 and string 2. So this is called a single point crossover. You can look at it. You can do it at multiple points also. So single point crossover is an example. Chromosome 1 and 2. Your offspring will be like, it's a binary encoded chromosome. All right. This is a single point crossover example. A 2-point crossover, you do cut at 2 points, right? A 2-point crossover, you get chromosome 1 and 2 are the parents. So the reproduction or procreation operator will end up in basically mixing and matching, right? You create a new offspring by combining material from the 2 at by randomly what do you call it? I mean, primarily like exchanging the material, right? That's called 2-point crossover. You can do multi-point crossovers also, and the extreme is you do a selection at every bit. That is called a uniform crossover. So you have got chromosome 1 and chromosome 2. I decide that I need only one offspring, one child chromosome to be created for every bit. For every bit. What can I do? All right, I want to find the first bit of the offspring of the child chromosome. What I can do is I can flip a coin. I can actually toss a coin. So the coin, if the coin turns head, I'll say I'll copy the genetic material from chromosome 1. If the coin turns tail, I will what do you call it? Select. I'll copy the material from chromosome 2. So for every bit, I can choose, right, whether I should get the material, the genetic material from chromosome 1 or chromosome 2. I can do it for every bit. So this is called a uniform crossover. Each genetic bit is randomly selected from one of the corresponding genes of the parent chromosomes. I've created only one offspring. I can create n number of offsprings like this. Right? I can, if I want to, I can do the same thing. I can repeat the process. Random selection can be done with a simple random variable, which is basically a what do you call it? I mean, as simple as flipping a coin, or right. Bernoulli random variable would be like I can do that. All right. So basically, you select one of the randomly select one of the genetic material from one of the chromosomes, and that gets copied to every bit. So that's called a uniform crossover. Right, crossover between two good solutions may not always yield a better solution or a good solution. All right, and there is this classic what do you call story around Bernard Shaw marrying what do you call the world, the beauty king of the world at that point in time. So I mean, see, basically, there was an exchange between between Bernard Shaw and the beauty king at that point in time, and then so that says like yeah, between two good solutions, you may not always end up a good solution. You can. So there are contexts around it. So I just wanted to. So this is a story that's being celebrated. So parents are good. Probably the child being good side, that doesn't mean that you have a guarantee. Right? So, and this is another interesting principle. Elitism. Elitism is certain individuals may be good in a population, right? So you have a population. What you do in evolution, you have a population. From the population, based on fitness value, based on the natural or the selection criteria, you select certain parents, and those parents will give rise to the next generation, and then you compute the fitness for those generation, and then the process continues, right? There may be at any population at any particular point in time, there may be an individual which is pretty good, right? You see that this is whatever the best so far found, or whatever, some good individuals with good characteristics. Can you promote them? See, meaning the parent living through the child's life, and the child again the grandchild's life, and goes through it. Elitism is a method which copies the best chromosome to the new offspring. That says that the best one among the population will be copied to the new offspring without any modification. That's called elitism. The elite will get promoted to the next generation. So we would have, if that was possible, we would have Einstein's kind of people living today also. So this is what it is. Essentially, elitism is the method to promote the best chromosomes to the new offspring population, and then you keep continuing there, right? Promoting offspring to the next generation. So that's about the combination operator, primarily like it's called the reproduction operator or the procreation operator. And if you want to add little changes around, primarily like you want to do a perturbation around a solution, you go for what is called mutation. Mutation is essentially making a little change around an individual. Only one individual participates. It is processed by its strings is deliberately changed. So in order to introduce a diversity, primarily a perturbation. With respect to mutation probability, you determine like whether you need to do a mutation or not. Mutation probability is it's essentially like you can do a random guess, and a guess based on that what do you call it? You can generate a random number, and the random number between some value whatever, and then you say, okay, I'll do mutate, otherwise I don't do mutation. So basically, very similar to the random number, randomness that you introduced in chromosome. Example of a mutation. So for chromosomes using binary encoding, mutation is randomly selected bits are involved. So for example, let's assume that how many bits are there? Say let's assume that there are 15 bits, every more than or less. So I've got a 12-bit long, what do you call, chromosome. I decide that two, what do you call, mutation has to happen. All right. How do you mutate? I can actually I can generate random between 1 and 12, right? So that becomes the first whatever. So I get a position 5, which means that the fifth position will be flipped. If it is a 0, I will become a 1. If it is a 1, it will become a 0. And I need to do two mutations. So I can generate one more random number between 1 and 12, and I can mutate, right? This is one way of implementing. Or else I can say like, okay, for every bit I can flip a coin. I don't know. I don't fix the number of mutations for every bit position. If the what do you call the I mean, I can do I can throw a dice. If I get a 6, I'll mutate. Otherwise, I don't. So the chance of a bit getting mutated is 1 by 6. Right? I've got the die has got 6 faces. Is the number 6 turns up at the visible face, I do mutate. Otherwise, I don't mutate. So for every bit position, I can throw a die and I can decide whether to mutate or not. Right. So this is how the mutation probability is typically implemented. Mutation probability is essentially like deciding whether you need to mutate or not at a position. Right. Right. Having said all this, we have got operators. Let's do a recap. Evolutionary computation is, or genetic algorithm is essentially mimicking the natural evolution process. What you do over here is you corresponding to a population of individuals, you have population of solutions. Corresponding to natural selection, you have parent selection. Corresponding to procreation, reproduction operation, you have crossover and variation around it, the mutation. Corresponding to the fitness function in nature, you have objective function or fitness function in the GA. Once you have all these, you can use this computing paradigm to solve problems, right? And some of the advantages of GAs are these are global search methods. So essentially, like they can search for the optimal solution in the set of all possible solutions. These are little better than exhaustive search because there are some guidance through the fitness function that you get. All right, and these are blind search methods. So if you want to apply GA to a particular application, this may be a product mix problem. This may be a what do you call a advertising mix problem. This may be a motor control problem. This may be a design problem. The GA algorithm doesn't change. Once you have a means to encode your solutions in the form of chromosome, once you have a means to decide what sort of parent selection strategies works, once you have a means to define your objective function in your problem context, GA, the algorithm is the same. GA starts with a set of individuals in a population. So you fix the population size. You start with a random guess of the population or an informed guess of the population. You do a parent selection. You do procreation. You evaluate. I mean, based on the objective function, you do basically like what do you call the evaluation, and then again the parent selection. The process continues. So as long as the basic fundamental building blocks of genetic algorithms, such as encoding of solutions, the parental selection strategy, the definition of fitness function, and the way in which you do reproduction or procreation, the crossover and the mutation operator. If you can define these building blocks in the problem, in the context of your problem, irrespective of whether you're attempting a motor control problem or you're attempting a product mix problem or a market mix problem or a design problem or a problem where what do you call an allocation problem or a whatever the bin packing problem, or you're working on a class allocation problem. It doesn't matter if your problem is primarily if your problem is falling in the category of optimization problems, and if you're looking for a search solution, search strategy, generic search strategy with which you'll be able to solve your problem, and you are able to build the basic building blocks that a GA would require, you are in game. So the GA as such, the algorithm doesn't worry too much about what you call the problem specific characteristics beyond the basic building blocks. So hence the name blind search methods. This can be easily used in parallel machines. Parallelization of G is very much possible, primarily because these are search processes. And you've got, so you have to do multiple computations which are parallelizable. So you are computing the objective function, you're computing what you call selection over sets. So you can easily do parallelization of these. Right, this is just for, don't worry too much about this example because it's just for illustration. So there is a it's basically a maze game. There is a starting point, the maze, and your agenda, and this robo can I mean basically like that agent can have 4 movements. You can move north, is basically you can move up, move down, right, north or south, down. Then there is east, then east and west. So these are the 4 movements that you are representing, right? And there is this is your starting point. This is where the agent starts, and the agent has to reach here, right? At any point in time, like the coordinates of this grid primarily, like this can be 1 1, this can be whatever, 64 64, 100 100, whatever, right? So whatever you have a number here. And you will be from any position, you will be able to compute the distance, primarily distance between any pair of grid cells. You can compute. If that's the case, your solution, what are you looking for? You want to show the agent a path from what do you call the source to the destination. And let's assume that this can be reached in maybe like whatever 10 steps, right? Right, there can be like, I mean, the least one may have the least the one with the least length maybe a little lower in length, but let's assume that typically it would require say 15 steps or whatever. So you define a chromosome with whatever 15 elements, and each of these element is essentially a movement, right? 0 0, you move north, you then whatever 1 0 east, and likewise. This is one solution. Likewise, I can start with a population size of 3, which means that I have a randomly guessed some solutions, 3 solutions. All right. See, may not reach the actual point. So I have the maze problem, maze search problem. I have defined the basically the path problem for the agent is we are trying to solve it with genetic algorithms. We start with a random guess. We may not be like kind of. So we have, now we need to define objective function. Objective function is from any whatever the number of steps that you need to take from the current cell or the end of the where you stop to basically where you need to say, for example, from here I need to reach here. So from I'm here, I'm at this cell, and what's the distance between these two? So I can actually like kind of, if the distance is more, I would say like I'm not that fit. So 0 minus whatever that distance can be my objective function. So essentially what I'm trying to say is we can actually solve this maze problem with a genetic algorithm. So let's assume that we start with a population size of 4. Our genome is basically 16 bits, meaning we'll encode 16 movements. Fitness function we define. Fitness function is 0 minus number of squares from the current position. Current position is current position of the head, or current position of the head to this. All right, 0 minus. Why 0 minus? Because if I am far apart, I should be less fit compared to if I am nearby, right? Here I'll get a 0, or else I'll get a -1 or whatever. So how far I am, so that's the fitness. And let's assume that we are going for a propagation is basically an elitist greedy. We'll look at a selection mechanism which is greedy in nature, meaning like we'll respect the current best. So let's start with an initial population of 4 random 16-bit strings. That's where we start. Don't look too much about into the numbers, actual numbers, because it's just for illustration. We're going to see a more concrete example very soon. Right, fitness calculation is like this. For this, basically 0 minus 4. Likewise, you get basically the values for fitness. All right, the selection is P1 and P2 as parents of the next generation. So I've told you the selection strategy was greedy, meaning a greedy selection strategy. It's another variant. We'll choose the best ones, right? So we can choose P1 and P2. All right. So you have chosen 2. All right, and single point crossover. So basically, like, you can actually, like, what do you call it? You can exchange material. You got this offspring. From the offspring, you do a mutation. 2-bit mutation. You got this. Right. So essentially, you got a new generation of individuals. From the new generation of individuals, what do? You do the same thing. You compute their fitness function, and based on the fitness function, you can actually greedy selection. You can do a mutation. You get. So you keep moving this, keep moving in the space like this. So it's a maze problem. So maze problem can be solved by a what we call genetic algorithm. So just an illustration. If you want to carefully look at this, is an example that I've taken from the internet just to demonstrate how it happens. Let's see a little more concrete example. Some Goldberg paper, Goldberg book, actually, like the article in the book actually in published in 98, Goldberg 98. So the paper, it's a simple problem. This problem doesn't require genetic algorithm. The problem is trivial. Maximize x square over the interval 0 to 31. That's what it is. So you can easily understand that this doesn't require any genetic algorithm. Approach is, let's go for a binary encoding. So you have solution numbers are between 0 and 32. So 31. So you need only how many bits? You need only 5 bits. Binary encoding, 5-bit representation. 13 will get represented like this. Population size, let's fix at 4. 1-point crossover, bitwise mutation is what we agree. Rowlett-Wheel selection is a selection strategy. Random initialization of population. We'll start with. Let's look at this example. You start with an initial population for random guesses, numbers 13, 24, some numbers you guessed. You can compute the fitness function, right? What is the fitness function? X square, right? Fitness function is nothing but your agenda is to maximize, right? Your fitness function is x square. You compute x square, all right? So once you have all these, so you can actually add up all these fitness values. 1170, 169 by 1170 is 0.14. All right. So then likewise, whatever the 576 divided by 1170 is 0.49. So you get the primarily the proportion. All right. From the proportion, what do? You are doing a Rowlett-Wheel. You do a Rowlett-Wheel selection. All right. And if you want an expectation, what is expectation? XPX. All right. Then, so what is XPX over the summed over all the possible values? So basically, like, each of these do have a chance of what do you call chance of appearing. So you've got four what do you call options. All right. So the random variable can assume all right, 13 appearing, 24 appearing, 8 appearing, or 19 appearing. So basically, like, I've got 4 values for the random variable, and these are essentially like the actual probability values, right? So are they equal? Like, are they equally likely? They're not, because they have a chance. So they're what do you call the Rowlett-Wheel selection is the strategy, which means that they've got what do you call, they've got their corresponding area allocated based on their random based on their fraction. So and you get 4 potential values. Out of the 4 potential values that the values that the random variable can assume, you get these are the probability values. So essentially, like if you look at the expectation, complete the expectation will be like roughly equal to 4 into these values. So it's essentially XPX getting computed out there, and this is what the expected values of the random variable. And what you do is so essentially like 1 by 4 into that value will be equal to your probability value. That's what it is. That 4 will get multiplied into 1 4. So essentially come around to 0.5657. So this is the kind of the expectation of the random variable. And what happens here is this is the actual count in the Rowlett wheel. When the Rowlett wheel is actually rotated, you observe these kind of values. Right. So that this is not very important. It's just to give you an idea of how this happens in reality. You get this in the genetic algorithm context. You compute this 169 by 1170, and likewise you do a Rowlett wheel selection. From the Rowlett wheel selection, these are the ways in which these got selected. So you got 4 elements. So 1100 appearing twice, 11000 appearing twice. This became the parent. From the parent, you do a crossover operator, and then you get the offspring. You can get the values for them and get the fitness function for them. From the fitness function, you can, what do you do again? You do 144 divided by 1754, 1625 by 1754. You compute the Rowlett wheel selection. Once you do the Rowlett wheel selection, what do you do? You again, rotate the wheel. You get somebody selected. All right. The process continues, and the process continues, and finally, like you will find the optimal value for the function x square over the interval. So this is how it proceeds, just to demonstrate the process. All right, let's look at a more concrete example, the traveling salesman problem, the TSP problem. How do you use the notion of genetic algorithms or the concept of genetic algorithms to solve the traveling salesman problem? Traveling salesman problem, I want to explain. We have to find the shortest route covering every other city, no city visited more than once, minimize the total cost of travel is the agenda. Let's assume that the cities are, I've got a 6-city problem, Mumbai, Nagpur, etc. Right, 6 cities, and you know the distance between the cities also. All right, the cost matrix, the distance between the cities also. May not be like absolute measures, I just took some numbers. All right, what's your agenda? You need to solve this problem using genetic algorithm. What are the things that you need to look at? The first thing is your problem needs to be encoded. Your solution needs to be encoded in the form in a form where genetic algorithms can utilize the principle of search. So the first process is encoding, and we have already seen the encoding used here would be permutation encoding, because every permutation is a solution. It's a potential solution, the candidate solution, right? 1 2 3 4 5 6 is one permutation. Likewise, you can have multiple permutations, right? What will be the fitness function? Fitness function will be the total cost of the two. I've already told you in the beginning. Lesser the sum, lesser the total cost of the two, the fitter will be the solution. All right. All right. So the fitness function will be like 413256 will be 7993 kilometers, and likewise you can do, like, your agenda is to minimize the fitness. And the selection procedure can be, let's assume that we use a tournament selection. Now what's remaining? You have an encoding. Encoding is permutation encoding. You have got a fitness function, which is the total cost of travel. You have got a selection strategy, which is tournament selection. What is remaining? You need the procreation or reproduction operators, so that new offspring can be generated out of the available solutions. Can we go with simple crossover? That's a question. So let's look at it. Say we have got some solutions. We start with some random guess, some solutions, right? Some random guess. You've got a population of, let's assume that we've got population of 6 solutions or whatever, right? And we actually randomly choose 2 individuals, and from 2 individuals, so these are the 2 individuals chosen for selection. Out of the 2 individuals, what we do is we choose one, the one with the minimal value, because the one with the minimal value is more fit, right? That's what tournament selection does, right? The best one among these 2 will be here. So this will get selected. Among these 2, this will get selected. Among these 2, this will get selected. Among these 2, this has lower value. This will get selected. And likewise, you get, this is a mating pool. So you got the parents. Can we just do a simple crossover? Right? If you do a single cut crossover, say 413 and 256, if you cut at one point and stitch it back, right, the solution will be 413, 156. I mean, if you basically like cut and stitch it back, what will happen is some city will be visited more. Say, for example, in this solution, you can see like 4322. So this is not a valid solution. So conventional crossover operators like a single point crossover or multi-point crossover or uniform crossover doesn't work here, right? So in this TSP problem, we can't use a conventional crossover operator. All right, people have researched on that, and 1991 there's a Starkweather paper. The paper is on comparison of genetic sequence operators. The International Conference on GS 1991, they published a paper and they came up with an operator called edge enhanced, basically enhanced edge recombination operator, which is a crossover operator, a new crossover operator, and it works by what is called an edge table operation. It's very simple, edge table. So let's look at how the crossover operator can be one particular form of crossover operator which works in a TSP problem. Say permutation encoding, cutting and stitching back will not work because it will actually change, alter the basic principle of a TSP problem. TSP doesn't allow a city to be visited more than once, right? So the research outcome is enhanced edge recombination operator, 1991 paper, and the crossover operator they suggested works on what is called an edge table. It's nothing but an adjacency table. You have got two parents. Let us look at the crossover operator between which works with two parents. Let's have two parents for one. These are two tours, right? We'll first construct an edge table. What is an edge table? Say it's an adjacency table. 1, 2. These are the 6 edges. Sorry, these are the 6 nodes. Each of the node is a city, right? We have got 6 cities. In this particular thing, the city 1, in this particular ordering, city 1 is visited from 4, and from city 1, you're moving to city 3. So for 1, 4 and 3 are adjacent. In this particular tour, for city 1, the cities 4 and 3 are adjacent. City 1, 4 and 3 are adjacent. You got it? For city 3, 1 and 2 are adjacent. For city 3, 1 and 2 are adjacent. If a city is, say for example, city 2, from this chromosome, you can see that 3 and 5 are adjacent. 3 and 5 are adjacent. City 2, 3 and 5 are adjacent. I write 3 and 5. City 2, 3 and 1 are adjacent. 3 is adjacent twice, so I've represented that with a different color. You can see a green color here, just to say that city is visited more than one when you consider both the parents. So you create an edge table. Edge table is nothing but an adjacency table. You take every city, every node, list down all its neighbors, right, in the form of an adjacency list that you are using the typical data structures paradigm, adjacency list. For 1, I write 4, 3. For 1 here, I get 2 and 1, I get 2 and 5, 2, 5 last. For 2, for 3, I'll say, for 3, I have 1 and 2 as adjacent. For 3, I have 1 and 2 as adjacent. For 3, I have 4 and 2 as adjacent. 2 again, so another color for 2. For 5, I've got 2 and 5. 5, I got, so 5, I got 2 and 6. 5, I got 2 and 6. For 5, I've got 1 and 6. So I get 1, 2, and 6 as adjacent. So I create this table. Once I create this table, my strategy is pretty simple. I can start with any city, right? I can start at any city, and I'll go to the city with the shortest edge list. That'll be my strategy. Let's go. This is my process. I start with, this is my adjacency table, the original table. I'm not done anything. This is the original table with all the color changes. Color changes when city is visited. I mean, city is adjacent to more than one parent. City is observed to be adjacent in more than one parent is the color change. All right, I start here. I start with the city 4. Once I do city 4, right, I need to travel. Where can I travel next? I have got, for each of the cities, I've got this list. In this list, I can see this is the shortest list. This is the shortest list. I don't count replication twice. So this is the shortest list. So now shortest list is what is the meaning of the shortest list? Which means that there are only few number of cities adjacent to that particular city, right? So I will move to say 4, I will say, okay, 4, the shortest list with that particular city in the adjacent list would be 4 will have, I can move to 6, right? So I'll move to 6. What do I do now? Once I add 6, I will remove all occurrences of the selected city from the edge table. So 6 is occurring here, right? So likewise I do. So I start with 4. I have selected 4. I am repeating the process. I am starting with city 4, random city. Now what I do? I will remove 4 from the edge table. So 4 is here. I remove that from the edge table. So in the one edge table, only 3 to 5 remain. 4 is removed here. Only 1, 2 remain. And likewise, I got this. From this, I look for the list with the least. So again, this is the list with the least thing, 5. Right. So this has only one entry called 5. So I choose 6 as the next city. I'll choose the city with the minimal length for its adjacency list. All right. From 4, 6, what do I do? What is the next step? I should remove all 6 from this side. Right. I'll remove that city from what I'll do. So the city 6 is over here. This 6 will go. This 6 will go. So I'll get a refined thing. All right. I got this removed. Now this has the next. Again, what is that thing? This is already covered. So I've got multiple options, out of which I would say, like, I'll choose the one with least thing, 3, 2, right? 1, 3 and 3, 2 are options. I can randomly choose if there are multiple options. I choose 5 as the next city. I remove 5 from here. I get this. I've got multiple options. I can randomly regress and I keep propagating, right? I keep adding this particular form of crossover operator. So essentially, I end up in a new chromosome created out of the 2. From the 2 thing that I see here, I create a new offspring, right? And now I can create as many what you call new offspring as I want by doing a mutation operator. I can flip some of these things. How do you do mutation in a permutation encoding? I can flip positions. I can actually 1 and 5. I can flip positions. I bring 5 over here to the second position and 1 over to this position, and I flip 2 positions. I get a new offspring. So I can create as many new offspring I want. I keep repeating this process. All right. And what happens here is so let me do a recap. We need to solve TSP. TSP is a hard problem. All right. Can we use GE as a search mechanism or an optimization strategy to solve the TSP problem? So the first thing I want is I need an encoding. We got permutation encoding. I need a parallel selection strategy. I said two-element selection. I need a fitness function. I have the distance covered. That's a fitness function on a tool. I need a procreation operator or a reproduction operator. The conventional operators doesn't work. People have come out with new operators. The edge table-based operator or recombination operator, and I've got an operator. I can do mutate to do new offspring. I can generate new offspring. I keep repeating the process so till I fill the entire whatever, right, entire cell. So I get what you call a 6 long string. I repeat this process as many times. I go through all these iterations, and ultimately I end up in a TSP solution, right? An approximate TSP solution. That's how it is. And this is how genetic algorithms work. You can use it for a vast variety of problems. Excel solver uses genetic algorithms. It's an optimization as a solver. And the baseline is GAs are so smart. Why aren't they rich? Right? From the book by Goldberg. Genetic algorithms are rich in applications across a large and growing number of disciplines. This is one of the most celebrated algorithms in the entire search algorithms driven by approximation algorithms in the search space on the optimization space, primarily driven by data-driven computations, algorithms inspired by nature. So this falls in the category of nature-inspired computing, falls in the category of machine learning-based approaches. This falls in the category of because essentially you are implementing a what do you call a search strategy, and you're any sort of learning. If you look at it, it's essentially a search strategy. So if you have the right search strategy to search for the weights in a neural network, you can do that. So people have combined principles of neural networks and genetic algorithms, principles of kernel machines and genetic algorithms, principles of what do you call clustering. You can do. Can you do clustering with genetic algorithms? You can do it. Can you do solve optimization problems genetic algorithms? People have attempted. So the class of problems of which GS can be applied are enormously huge, and I would urge you to explore this a little further. And I would be stopping the recording over here.